Have you ever stepped into a room where no one says a word, yet the air alone sends a chill down your spine, not from the temperature, but from the presence of something deeply wrong, unseen yet unmistakable? We sense it even before we can explain why. And the unsettling truth is this: toxic people don't disappear when exposed. On the contrary, they react, not with outbursts of rage, but with calculated tactics, manipulation, blame shifting, and a quiet reclaiming of control. In this video, we will confront 7 common behaviors of malicious individuals once they realize you've seen through them. More importantly, we'll learn how to stand firm, guided by Stoic principles, so that we not only endure, but rise, fortified from within. 1. They emit a disturbing energy. No words needed. Just their presence manipulates. We don't need tangible proof to feel the unease when near certain people. Sometimes their mere entry into a room shifts the atmosphere. It's not because they've said anything wrong, nor because of any overtly harmful act. It's their presence, subtly triggering tension within us. The sensation is like a thin smoke, seeping through every glance, every gesture, every question laced with concern but wrapped in implication. This is not imagination. It is the mind's response to manipulative energy, the kind emitted when someone realizes you've seen through them. On an instinctual level, we are wired to detect threats, even those that come without words or action. When a toxic person senses they were losing control, they don't explode. Instead, they emanate a silent unease, as if one misstep from you could ignite the room. What's critical here is that this energy isn't accidental. It's part of a calculated effort to regain control. Rather than confront or threaten directly, they craft a subtle pressure, enough to unsettle, but vague enough to escape definition. In that space, you begin to self-regulate. You speak appropriately, share less, maybe even apologies, despite having done nothing wrong. When someone malevolent knows you've seen them clearly, they no longer feel safe. The collapse of their mask disorients them, and their first move is to make you question what you saw. This is the first maneuver in a manipulation sequence, not to reclaim your trust, but to make you doubt yourself. They won't deny the truth outright. Instead, they'll implant the idea that what you experienced might just be your perception. It's difficult to analyze these strange vibrations through logic, because they don't come from it. They come from how they look at you, how they enter a space, how they linger too long in one spot, making you feel watched. They use the smallest gestures, eye contact, breathing rhythms, extended silence, as invisible threads that constrict the space, making relaxation impossible, even without a single word of hostility. Especially skilled manipulators barely need to speak. They create an atmosphere that keeps you on alert, like walking across thin ice. Strangely, others might not perceive it at all. Only you feel suffocated. This makes it even harder to explain your emotions, leaving you labeled as too sensitive or overly suspicious. And that's where the danger lies. When you can't name the problem, you can't address it directly. The manipulator knows this well. They know how to stay within the safe limits, not overtly malicious, but enough to poison the air around you. They may not insult you, but they'll ask, "You look tired lately," or "Is something wrong? You seem a little off today." Seemingly caring words actually disguise scrutiny, designed to make you question yourself. In such environments, our mental energy is easily eroded. You begin to mistrust your instincts. You grow cautious with what you share. You monitor your words and expressions. Every conversation becomes an internal censorship. And that is how you are being manipulated without realizing it. Emotional freedom gets slowly strangled, and if prolonged, this becomes chronic tension, fragmenting your sense of self bit by bit. It must be emphasized, they don't do this by accident. They do it to reassert control they have just lost. Once unmasked, their only remaining tactic is to disorient you. They don't need you to believe them. They only need you to doubt yourself. And with your hesitation, the door to manipulation reopens. Thus, the key is not to overreact, but to remain lucid. When you sense someone's negative energy, don't dismiss it. Acknowledge the feeling as objective data. It's not weakness or paranoia. It's a valid internal warning. And once the signal is clear, draw firm boundaries. Don't let yourself be pulled into that energy field. In the Stoic spirit, calmness doesn't mean ignoring danger. It means confronting it without surrendering control. Your ability to sense unsettling energy is a skill, not a flaw, and your steadiness in that space is a mark of willpower, something the manipulator will never possess. 2. They only return when they need something, and when you're no longer useful, they disappear. One of the clearest signs of a toxic person is how they enter and exit your life, as if you were a door, only opened when they have a need to walk through. When you need them, they are silent. When they need you, they reappear, not to check in, not out of care, but because you have something they want. This behavior often escapes immediate notice because such people rarely get to the point directly. They usually begin with familiar lines. It's been a while. How have you been? Just thought of you. Didn't know who else to ask about this. Words that sound harmless, perhaps even heartwarming. But within minutes, the true purpose emerges: to borrow money, ask for help, seek connections, or simply absorb your attention, sympathy, or precious time. What's worth noting is that these individuals may have been there for you in the past, but only when it suited them. They were present during the good times, the successes, or when you had something that appealed to them. But when hardship came, they vanished without a trace, not because they were busy, but because you no longer served a purpose. The relationship was never rooted in sincerity, but in conditional cooperation, conditions that shifted with their needs. When the manipulator realizes you've seen through their true motive, they don't retreat immediately. Instead, they adjust their approach. They become subtler, gentler, even remorseful about their prior absence. They might say things like, "I know I've been distant. I was in a rough place, so I didn't reach out." But the goal remains unchanged: to regain proximity, not to stay, but to continue extracting. The danger lies in how convincingly fake the performance can be with way. The toxic don't declare their intentions. They mask them in friendliness, contrition, or even acts of kindness. And if you're someone who believes in the goodness of people, you're likely to fall for the illusion, believing this time it's genuine, that they've returned for connection rather than convenience. A telltale pattern is their reappearance at very specific moments: when they are in trouble, when they need financial, emotional, or reputational support, or when they are simply lonely. They don't call when life is steady. They only show up when something is missing, and they think you might provide it. They arrive, take what they need, and wait again as if they were never there. Another facet of this behavior is emotional inconsistency. These people rarely maintain stable, long-term relationships. They jump from person to person, group to group, in the same pattern: make contacts, earn trust, extract value, and withdraw. They leave behind those who once trusted, opened up, and offered their time and care, each one reduced to a spent resource in their eyes. When confronted, they rarely admit fault. Instead, they blame circumstances, saying, "Everyone needs help sometimes." Or worse, accuse you of being unsympathetic, too rigid, or not trusting in friendship. This is emotional manipulation, designed to make you feel guilty for doubting them and to reopen the door once more. Stoic philosophy views relationships not merely as interactions, but as a process of discerning each person's true value. We are not obligated to sever all ties, but we are responsible for recognizing those who show up only to deplete us. If not, we remain trapped in a cycle. Forgive, be used, get hurt, and forgive again. Not everyone who returns does so with ill intent, but if someone only appears when they need something and disappears when you do, then it is no longer a relationship. It is a one-sided transaction. You maintain, they consume. A healthy relationship is built on consistent presence, mutual trust, and the ability to give and receive without constant calculation. When someone only shows up when there's a benefit to gain, it's a sign they care less about who you are and more about what you temporarily offer. Thus, recognizing this behavior isn't about breeding suspicion. It's about protecting your time, your energy, and your trust. In life, the most precious currency isn't money. It's presence, yours and that of those who truly value you. 3. They pretend to be innocent and shift the blame. They don't admit fault. They make you doubt yourself. When a toxic person is confronted with the truth, they rarely acknowledge their actions directly. Instead of responding with honesty, they often choose to play the role of the innocent. They feign surprise, act bewildered, and pretend not to understand what's happening, as if they are the ones being wronged or misunderstood. It is a strategy designed to deflect psychological pressure away from themselves. Common expressions in such moments are loaded questions like, "Why didn't you say something earlier? I had no idea you felt that way." Or, "I thought I was doing the right thing." These aren't meant to resolve anything. They are meant to put you on the defensive. You're no longer the one seeking clarity. You become the one who was unclear, who bottled things up, or who is being unreasonable. This shift in role happens subtly. As they present themselves as innocent, they quietly push you into doubting your own judgment, wondering if you misunderstood, overreacted, or perhaps caused unnecessary trouble. Meanwhile, the original wrongdoing, what truly needed to be addressed, is pushed out of focus. They don't outright deny what they did. They simply create a fog that leaves you unsure of your own perspective. A frequent tactic is calculated connivance. They appear puzzled, furrow their brow, hesitate, or retreat into silence, forcing you to fill in the gaps. They know that their silence will compel you to keep explaining, keep stepping back, keep second-guessing. And somewhere in that exchange, the focus shifts from their behavior to your emotions, an unjust reversal. Emotional manipulation here doesn't require shouting. It's executed through gentle words, carefully measured reactions, just enough to make you wonder if maybe you're overreacting. The manipulated often spiral into self-questioning. Am I being too sensitive? Did I misread the situation? Maybe they didn't mean it. And that is the manipulator's deeper goal, to make you question your own experience. Manipulators may also exploit your compassion to turn the tide. They emphasize how hurt they feel at being blamed, expressing disbelief that you could think so poorly of them. At that point, the listener, once the original victim, starts to feel guilty for hurting the feelings of someone who now seems unaware. And again, the core issue slips away. What makes this reversal dangerous is its repetition. Each time you speak up, they use the same script, act surprised, stress their lack of intent, then subtly question your emotional response. Over time, you learn that expressing your feelings leads only to fatigue, distrust, and guilt. This is when you grow silent, not out of forgiveness, but because you are no longer sure whether your pain is valid. This tactic isn't thoughtlessness, it's deliberate control, built on an intimate understanding of others' weaknesses, especially those who are sensitive, empathetic, or prone to self-doubt. The more sincere you are, the easier it is to be manipulated. The more polite you are, the easier it is for them to redirect the blame. From the Stoic perspective, the true danger is not in overt deceit, but in emotional manipulation that detaches us from truth. Once you no longer trust what you see, hear, or feel, you've lost the foundation of reason. And when reason falters, it becomes easy to accept what's wrong, simply out of fear that your firmness is selfish or rigid. This act of feigned innocence and blame reversal doesn't just disrupt relationships. It breeds toxicity, where the honest are cast as troublemakers, and the manipulators are forgiven for being too gentle. It is injustice cloaked in empathy and humility, but left unchecked, it can corrode the spirit profoundly. 4. They instantly reinvent themselves. When exposed, they don't change, they change roles. When a toxic person realizes you've seen through who they truly are, they don't seek to correct themselves or face the consequences of their actions. Instead, they enter a phase of reinvention, a calculated effort to rebuild their personal image in order to dodge accountability, redirect attention, and ultimately regain control over the relationship. This behavior is not random. It is a defensive strategy born from the fear of losing influence and reputation. When the mask falls, rather than standing in the light of truth, they quickly construct a new one, more attractive, more pitiful, or more awakened. They may adopt the role of victim of circumstance, someone deeply wounded, or even a person on a healing journey. A notable trait is that this new persona often directly contradicts what you've just uncovered. If they were exposed as selfish, they now present themselves as selfless. If they once manipulated others, they now pose as someone who was manipulated. This transformation happens swiftly and is often accompanied by emotionally charged details. Tragic childhood stories, major life upheavals, or spiritual awakenings. The aim is not true transformation. The aim is to make you question your earlier perception of them. They don't erase their wrongdoing. They overwrite it with a touching, morally polished narrative. In doing so, they hope you'll begin to think you misjudged them, that their past behavior was just a passing phase, or worse, the result of pain you couldn't possibly understand. In this process, they rarely act alone. They often recruit support, friends, acquaintances, even social media, to reinforce the new persona. They retell their story in multiple settings, with varied tones, but always with the same purpose: to reconstruct their image and isolate you from others' sympathy. In doing so, they weaken your ability to speak up or gain support if you continue to expose the real issue. A common example is when you call out someone's deceit or harm, and they reappear in public as the misunderstood one. They share past traumas, insist their recent actions were just moments of weakness, or claim long-standing emotional strain. They elicit empathy, and in the eyes of the crowd, you, the one who spoke the truth, are now seen as harsh or lacking compassion. This leads to a dangerous outcome. You are not only stripped of public support, but begin to question your own intuition. When everyone around you begins to believe in their new persona, you start to feel isolated. The confidence you once had in uncovering the truth fades into doubt and inner conflict. They don't need to convince you directly. They only need to persuade those around you and let silence do the rest. This strategy of persona reinvention is especially insidious because it exploits deep moral values in society: forgiveness, empathy, and belief in the potential for change. They don't deny the truth. They drown it in a wave of new narratives, causing people to forget the original reason you spoke out. At that point, truth matters less than the emotion their story evokes. At the psychological level, this behavior seeks to reclaim power through false empathy. Instead of facing real consequences, they shift from being the aggressor to the one who is hurt. They draw sympathy not to heal, but to obscure reality. They do not apologize. They wield compassion as a shield to protect themselves. This behavior often follows a cycle: reinvent, convince others, regain trust, then repeat the same actions in more subtle forms. Each time they layer on a new mask, and the cycle continues unless clearly identified. This is not growth. It is survival through manipulation. In a world where truth threatens the power they seek to maintain, from the Stoic lens, the issue is not in judging the emotions they display, but in observing whether there is real change in behavior. A new persona is not proof of growth if it lacks clear, consistent, and transparent action. Meanwhile, a string of emotional stories without responsibility is merely another curtain, designed to prolong influence and evade the truth. 5. They lie to cover old lies. One lie demands a dozen more to survive. When someone is caught in a lie, the natural response of a person with integrity is to admit it, confront it, and take responsibility. But for manipulators, the exposure of a lie is not the end. It is the beginning of a new sequence of deception, more subtle, more layered, and harder to untangle. These individuals do not seek to make things right. They seek to regain control by crafting another lie to conceal the first. This process is not merely about hiding the truth, but about preserving an image, a status, or a power built on dishonesty. And to maintain it, they are willing to keep lying, regardless of contradictions, regardless of the growing web of connivance. A clear marker of this behavior is the increasing inconsistency. When you begin to question or point out discrepancies, they do not offer reasonable explanations. Instead, they pivot to a new story. This version is often hastily constructed, lacking logic, and sometimes even contradicting previous claims. But rather than revise their stance, they keep adding details, patching cracks with more fiction, until the story becomes too convoluted to follow and exhausting to challenge. The tactic has a specific goal: to confuse you and make you doubt your own memory. As things become tangled, they might say, "I told you already. Maybe you misremember." Or, "That's not how it happened." This isn't direct denial. It's a form of cognitive manipulation, aimed at eroding your certainty in what you know to be true. The more they are exposed, the more layers they add. Each new lie is not only a cover for the old one, but a delay tactic, a distraction, a means to wear you down in your pursuit of clarity. They understand that most people give up when things become too complex, and they exploit that fatigue to stay protected. Often, the new lie isn't just a denial. It's a rewriting of the narrative in their favor. They recast their wrongdoing as a misunderstanding, an accident, or a result of pressure. In doing so, they shift the focus from intentional harm to external factors and escape accountability. More dangerously, the lie isn't only used to hide the truth, but to discredit the one who uncovered it. They may imply that you're exaggerating, causing division, or acting from personal motives. In this way, they don't just defend their image, they position you as the untrustworthy one, especially if others lack enough context to judge fairly. Compounding lies don't just break trust, they corrode the very space where honest communication can exist. Truth gets twisted, buried, or replaced with more convenient versions. In a relationship, this leaves the other person in constant confusion, doubting themselves, unable to distinguish reality from fiction. This is how lies, if left unchecked, can destroy one's sense of judgment and the ability to protect their own boundaries. The process creates a dangerous cycle. With every exposure, a new disguise is added. Over time, they themselves begin to believe the persona they have invented. They merge with the false identity, live in constant self-justification, and sever all connection to truth. The lie ceases to be a tactic. It becomes the core of how they function. The greatest threat of living in a wisp of lies is the spiritual erosion it brings. Those deceived repeatedly begin to shrink their trust, not only in the liar, but in everyone around them. They become guarded, withdrawn, and may reject even genuine support, because betrayal has worn a kind face too many times. At a deeper level, they may lose faith in their own intuition and compass. From the Stoic view, preserving reason is fundamental. When lies are repeated, they can make us waver, weaken, or remain silent just to avoid the drain. But Stoicism doesn't seek peace through evasion. It finds peace in standing firm in truth, no matter how uncomfortable or complex it may be. Truth does not require layers of language to defend it. It exists plainly and endures. A lie, no matter how artful, demands constant maintenance and endless concealment. That distinction is what marks the boundary between a free mind and one lost in the labyrinth of falsehood. 6. They take revenge in ways you don't expect. They don't strike you to your face. They undermine you in silence. When a toxic person realizes they can no longer manipulate you, when they see that you've broken free from their control and remain firm in your stance, one of their final and most dangerous responses is revenge. But the thing is, this revenge rarely happens in plain sight. It doesn't come through direct confrontation, but arrives quietly, subtly, and with calculated intent. Their revenge doesn't come immediately after the conflict, but often surfaces after a lull. When you believe it's over, when you've let your guard down, they don't yell or slander you openly, but begin to act behind your back. Their sabotage is indirect, making it difficult to identify them as the source, while you still suffer the real consequences. One of their common methods is to damage your reputation. They spread misinformation, sometimes just vague comments, insinuations, to plant doubt in others' minds. They don't need to lie outright. All it takes is asking the right question at the right time to the right person to stir suspicion. Over time, your image erodes in the eyes of others, and you won't know why. Another form is obstructing your work or social relationships. They look for ways to cost you opportunities, credibility, or key connections. This may take the form of negative remarks, misleading actions, or deliberate inaction, such as failing to introduce you in a crucial moment or distorting information to your disadvantage. Everything happens in a gray area, not blatant enough to confront, but damaging enough to wear you down. Their revenge may also involve using the vulnerabilities you once shared in trust. When you still believed in them, you might have confided your fears, failures, or past mistakes. They hold on to that, not for empathy, but for leverage. They bring it up in ways that hurt you, that shake your self-trust, or warp how others perceive you. The danger of this form of revenge lies in how well it hides beneath a calm surface. They may still act friendly, greet you politely, even pretend there's no conflict, but quietly, they are pulling strings to make your life harder, not with fists, but with invisible pushes, repeated over time. Those targeted by this kind of revenge often don't see it right away. They only notice increasing misunderstandings, lost opportunities, strange setbacks, and when they step back to look at the full picture, all signs lead to one person, the one they once trusted, the one they thought had left their life behind. The pain then isn't just in the damage done, but in the calculated betrayal. Another common tactic is manipulating sympathy to turn others against you. They retell the story in ways that cast them in a favorable light, subtly painting you as cold, harsh, or even the one who inflicted harm. To outsiders, they may appear as the one who was abandoned, the wounded soul, while you, the one who upheld boundaries and truth, are seen as cruel. This emotional reversal is no accident. It's a strategy to maintain social power and isolate you from your support system. From a rational perspective, the threat here isn't explosive rage. It's silent, steady, systematic retaliation. It shows they don't act from raw emotion, but from premeditated strategy. They don't need you to suffer all at once. They just want you to unravel slowly, and through that, they reclaim the control they lost. The hallmark of this revenge is a lack of dialogue, lack of transparency, and an abundance of manipulation. There's no direct confrontation, no clear accusations, just the quiet unraveling of someone who once stood firm. The attack doesn't come in a single blow, but in a chain of scattered events, leaving you tired, confused, and sometimes doubting yourself. In such an environment, the key is not to retaliate, but to hold your character steady and preserve inner awareness. Recognizing this type of revenge is vital to neutralizing its effect. If you don't react impulsively, don't strike back, and don't allow your spirit to collapse, then their revenge cannot fulfill its purpose. 7. They make you doubt yourself. They don't deny the truth. They make you question it. One of the most dangerous tools a toxic person uses isn't overt lies or obvious cruelty, but the ability to seed doubt within another's mind. When they realize you're beginning to see their true nature, they don't attempt to persuade you with logic or evidence. Instead, they make you question your own perception and memory. This behavior often begins with reactions that seem harmless. They deny what they have said or done, often with phrases like, "I don't remember saying that. Are you sure that happened?" Or, "I think you're blowing things out of proportion." These words aren't openly aggressive, but they are enough to crack your certainty, and from there, the doubt spreads. This strategy is known as gaslighting, a psychological manipulation tactic in which the manipulator deliberately distorts information, denies reality, or twists memory to make the other person question themselves. Over time, the victim loses confidence in their own perceptions, their memory, and even their moral compass. They no longer trust what they see, hear, or feel, because the other person always has a way of making them wonder, maybe I'm wrong. A defining trait of this behavior is selective denial. The manipulator doesn't deny everything, only what puts them at a disadvantage. They might admit to a small part of the truth to appear honest, then deny the crucial details. This blend of fact and fiction makes it impossible to draw a clear line, trapping you in a constant state of uncertainty. In such a manipulated environment, the affected person gradually develops a habit of emotional self-censorship. They become hesitant to share their real thoughts, because every time they do, they are questioned, judged as too sensitive or irrational. They begin to fall silent, not because they have nothing left to say, but because they're no longer sure whether their feelings are valid. The more this repeats, the deeper the effect becomes. The manipulated person may start apologizing for things they didn't do wrong, giving in during unreasonable situations, or trying to do better to avoid vague criticism. Meanwhile, the manipulator strengthens their position by convincing the victim that every problem stems from their own sensitivity, irrationality, or lack of understanding. Self-doubt doesn't stop at small details. Over time, it erodes self-esteem and weakens decision-making ability. The manipulated individual loses faith in their instincts, stops questioning wrongdoings, and often accepts the current situation as an unchangeable reality. They live defensively, always trying not to offend the other, even if it means abandoning their own emotions or values. What makes this form of manipulation especially dangerous is its invisibility. There's no physical violence, no direct insult, no concrete proof to hold on to. It's just a long chain of soft words, subtle denials, doubtful glances. But over time, they can collapse someone's entire inner trust. In many cases, the manipulated person begins to wonder if they're going insane after being dismissed too often, after having their memories repeatedly denied, after being told their reactions are too much. They start to question their own sanity. At that point, the manipulator doesn't need to do anything more. They've achieved total control, not through force, but by distorting another's reality from the inside. Another trait of this behavior is how gradually it unfolds, not shocking, but persistent. It may begin with a single, subtle denial, a few joking comments like, "You're overthinking it," and slowly, it becomes a repeating pattern where you're always the one second-guessing, while they're always the one who's reasonable, who doesn't understand what you're thinking, or who's just trying to help you see things clearly. And once the pattern goes too far, it's very hard to return to the place where you once trusted your own observations and feelings. From a rational perspective, making someone doubt themselves is one of the most insidious forms of control because it doesn't bind with force. It causes people to bind themselves with fear and doubt. The affected person doesn't need to be threatened. They will retreat on their own, fall silent, and adjust themselves to avoid trouble. Even when living in a reality that is deeply unhealthy, we cannot stop others from manipulating, pretending, or seeking revenge, but we can always choose how we respond. And that is where Stoic philosophy comes most alive in daily life. Personally, I've been through relationships that made me doubt myself. At times, I began adjusting my words, emotions, even thoughts, just to keep the peace with someone who constantly drained me mentally. But then I realized, when we lose the truth within, we also lose the greatest freedom of our lives, the freedom to choose our way of being. Practicing Stoicism doesn't mean being rigid or unfeeling. It means learning to set boundaries without anger, to walk away without resentment, and to guard clarity as a form of inner wealth. Every time I refuse to be pulled into manipulation, I train my self-mastery. Every time I stay calm in the face of covert retaliation, I know I've moved closer to inner steadiness. Stoicism doesn't make life easier, but it gives us the strength not to be distorted by the chaos around us. And sometimes, your very calmness is the thing that makes the manipulator unable to keep playing their game. If this video helped you see more clearly the things that quietly hurt you, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next content. This is the simplest way to walk alongside those choosing the path of awareness and self-mastery each day. Because in a world full of noise and tense, calmness is the strongest declaration that you have returned to the seat of your own power. See you in the next video.